Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It is Saturday. That's right. It's the weekend. July 20th. And this is your host, Eric, that flies by the seat of his pants most of the time. I thought we'd talk about today because it's not always actually doing the work that is the most important thing. It's the process, right? And for for you guys that have been doing it for years, a lot of times you don't even think anymore. It's just routine, right? But for others, it's developing a good process to problem solve whatever project you have going on and deciding how best to accomplish it. Well, hold on. Alrighty, so welcome back. My name is Eric, and yes, this is the weekend. We also do the weekday, Monday through Friday, available podcast as well. So today we're talking about sometimes the process of how to go about it is more important than doing the job. Okay? And case in point, you know, a lot of guys would look at that bolt on the bottom of that engine in the crankshaft and walk away. And I wouldn't blame you if you did, because if you don't get things just right, you can screw it all up terribly. And, right from how are you going to tackle that job? Do you have the tools you need to accomplish that job? What tools do you need to accomplish that job? And is all the tools and everything you need readily available where you can use it? And if not, why not? It starts with the simplest thing, a prick punch. Now, I've got two or three in my toolbox. Claude's got probably two or three in his toolbox because it's an important tool. You hardly ever use it, right? But when you need it, you need it. And that prick punch, if you don't get it dead center, and what is a prick punch? Prick punch is just a hardened point on a chisel. And you need to get dead center of that bolt on that crankshaft and give it a couple hard hits to start an indentation. And what is that indentation for? It's so that you can start with a drill and work your way in. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, you start small. And one of you commented, you start small and you resharpen a lot. True, we carry a lot of new bits in stock. And I've actually gone out and bought bits just for certain jobs. But we start with the smallest. And the biggest thing is, well, all right, start with the smallest. What is part of the process of doing it with the smallest bit? It's you don't want to put too much pressure. Don't get in a hurry because you're going to snap that drill bit off inside that bolt. And then you're really going to be screwed. But we went up 4 different sizes. And a lot of times, if the bolt has been out before, usually a couple of different sizes, and we can spin it out with the extractor or whatever. But if it hasn't, it's still got Loctite. And the easy outs, as good as they are, going up against that Loctite is crazy. One of you had asked, what was the bill? What was the charge for that? It was $235 plus tax. And that was, we did a general service on it and put new blades on it. And then our time with the crank. Customers thrilled. We're happy. And that's what it's all about, is making sure it's a win-win for everybody. Now, I know a couple of you guys are going to say you screwed yourself because it should have been a lot higher than that. True. But I figure the actual time spent, and that's how we base it. And I don't, if we go off that job and we go to another job, I don't continue billing the customer for that job. You know, my mind is pretty good about keeping track of how much time we spend on each job. But we still keep, a repair order out in the shop, and then one that's in by me. And if Claude adds a new part, or I do, we put the part on the sheet. We put down our time. When you start, when you finish. Or Claude a lot of times will put like 30 minutes, or 1.5 hours, 1.5. And then when he goes back to it, when the parts come in, or when he gets time to go back to that unit, he just keeps adding to his sheet. And that's where we come up with what we're going to charge. We don't pad the bill. We don't say, well, he could have been buying a new motor at $2,000, so we should jack his prices up. No. You want to be fair with everybody, including yourself, right? You got to make enough money so that you're not going bankrupt. But you don't want to be charging too much money where you don't have any customers, right? So, one of you had asked about I think it was the SB John Deere push mower. That's an oldie. I don't think I've seen one of those in probably 10 years. But what you had to say was very important. And that is knowing what tools you need, having the tools laid out, and then knowing that it's supposed to go step by step this certain way, right? I got news for you. Almost never does it go the way that the book tells you, step by step by step. There's always something that, comes up that causes chaos, or something that the book didn't tell you, or the video that you watched didn't tell you, that is highly important. But it wasn't supposed to come out that hard, or it wasn't supposed to fall into your hand in parts like that, right? So, what is the best procedure? Well, my feeling, if you're interested in that, is we each need to develop our own procedure. And what do I mean by we each need to, instead of having like one uniform way of doing it? Our minds don't all work the same. We are not all built the same intellectually. Doesn't mean that we can't learn all the same, right? But for some, certain things come easy, all right? And for others, it's a challenge. Everything's a challenge. If you're autistic, that's a challenge, right? But I've seen kids that were slightly autistic, if you allow them to come up with their own procedure of how to deal with life, how to express themselves. Now, is that going to be different than someone that is non-autistic? Good chances are. So you have to allow yourself to come up with your own way of approach. What works best for you? And the other thing that you have to be careful of when you're watching videos on YouTube is a lot of us tend to assume that you already know certain things when you don't. And that's not fair to you. And that's why I bring up on the channel numerous times, is there a way different that you would like to see in that video? Did we jump too far and assume too much? Because if we did, then we need to step back to the lowest common denominator. Because what I try to do is I try to teach at that level, at the lowest. Somebody from home, maybe never touched a wrench before, and how you go about it and what you need for tools. And videos from getting started. What are the must-have for start have, and then what are the things that are nice to have that will streamline the work in your shop. Everybody's got to start somewhere. And if you're a 12 or 14-year-old boy, my suggestion to you would be start mowing lawns, getting some money, and buying the tools you need to work on the craft to keep them going. So you're lucky in that the small engines, like the riders and all that stuff, are still, they're better than they were back when I was a kid. But there's still, you can do the repairs on them at home without having to have a computer plugged into the darn thing. And so it's still doable. And you can find stuff on the side of the road and make it run and feel like you accomplished something. Because you have. You accomplished something that somebody else felt wasn't worth the time, or it was going to cost too much to fix it. And when you're starting out, I always say time is money. If you don't have the money, you're going to have to spend the time learning how to do it. All right? And if you don't have the time, then you're going to spend having somebody do it for you, right? So it's a trade-off. But I can remember back when I was 12, 13 years old, I was flipping lawnmowers, snowblowers, snowmobiles, mini bikes, go-karts. Anything I could get my hands on and I could make run and run well. And then when I was 16, I graduated to the cars, the Camaro, the GTO, And it just took it up a notch. But then it started costing me money with cars and girls. That's where it gets costly. But again, it boils down to procedure. You have to develop your own way of attack. And you have to have the tools that we tell you are a must. And I'll start laying out the tools before the video of this is what you're going to need to attempt this job. And if you don't have certain tools that are very critical in that repair, then you're going to need to take a trip to Harbor Freight or order them online through eBay or, Amazon or wherever you. The stuff is a lot cheaper, the parts and the tools. And the other thing that goes hand in hand, hey sheep, is patience. And what I find is the older you are, the more patience you have, right? And if you're like me, I've got a lot more patience working on your machine than I do my own. I get frustrated. And why is that? Could be because I'm making money on your machine. I don't know. But what I found in life is it doesn't matter what you're doing. Shout. If you get into a hurry, 9 times out of 10, it takes you longer to get to where you want to be in the end. You know, it's right now we have haying going on. I have 2 balers, 2 mowers, 3 rakes, and 6 tractors. And there's just Claude and I and my son. You know, my son is in and out whenever he gets time. And Claude I've relied on a little bit less because the heat gets to bothering him. So I'm doing the mowing and raking and baling. And I've got 2 of each, you know. When we first started doing this, and Claude was in a little better shape, we were running both mowers, 2 rakes, 2 balers, and knocking it out in a short order. And now it's taking me twice as long because I don't have the other equipment going at the same time. But if I get into a hurry and I try to increase beyond the expectations of myself or the equipment, something's going to break, you know. And all right, so if the baler breaks, drop it, grab the other one, right? Yeah, until you have 2 broken balers. It's when you start rushing that you overlook it needs grease, lubrication, everything needs to work a certain way. Make sure your hydraulic fluids are good on the tractors. Make sure your tractors have got good hydraulics, which means that they've got a clean filter and clean oil, right? And that's the same way when you're working on stuff. If you tend to have a short attention span, you're going to start something and then give up. But if you develop a procedure with patience, then maybe with a short attention span, you're going to devote 5 minutes for each day of the week on working on something that you're trying to get done. And that 5 minutes each day can be more important than the 25 to 30 minutes you'd have spent on it in one clip versus the week, right? So I'm going to start wrapping this up. Keep the comments coming. I enjoy them and appreciate them. And we're trying to do more repair videos. We've got a hydraulic pump on a Ford New Holland that's coming in to get that replaced. We have an 8N Ford that the clutch won't disengage. So we got to find out if that's throwout bearing, clutch, and maybe we have to split it. And then you guys can see that. We pretty well cleared the lot out of lawn and garden. I've got another case 245 coming in next week. That same deal, clutch. So there's plenty of stuff to video. It's just trying to find the stuff that you're interested in. So on that note, you guys have a great Saturday, and I'll catch you here bright and early tomorrow morning. I'll let you know how haying went, because we're going to be doing it all day. Thanks so much for watching.